Chapter 7 Code, You May Call Me a Fool. The short answer was quickly lost in the grand temple and the mist, but the sound reverberated long after, creating ripples in Audrey and Alger's mind. Did not think that it should be this feeling of the name, the perfect embodiment of the mysterious, powerful, strange image of the name. After a few seconds of silence, Audrey stood up, lifted her skirt, bent her knees, and saluted Joming Rui. Dermer, fool, may I take the liberty of pleading that you bear witness to our transaction? A little thing. Joming Rui thought quickly, in accordance with the identity of the way to answer. It's our pleasure, Mr. Fool. Alger stood up after him, put his right hand on his chest, and bowed. Joming Rui pressed with his right hand and smiled. You go on. Alger nodded, sat down again, looked at Audrey and said, if you can get your hands on ghost shark blood, send it to the Warrior and the Sea Bar on Pelican Street in the White Rose area of Port Pritzker, and tell owner Williams it's what the captain asked for. When I confirm, do you want to send me the address for the potion recipe, or do I want to tell you right here? Audrey thought for a moment and smiled. I choose to be more private, right here, even though it tests my memory. Since Mr. Fool agreed to witness the transaction, that means there will be another such party. Thinking of these, she suddenly turned her head sideways, looked at Joming Rui with shining eyes, and proposed with great interest, Mr. Fool, would you mind trying like this a few more times? Alger listened to it calmly, and with a rush of emotion, he chimed in, Mr. Fool, don't you think this kind of party is very interesting? Although your power is beyond our imagination, there are always areas of the world that you do not understand and are not good at. And the lady opposite is obviously a noble birth, and I also have my own experience, insight, channels, and resources. And she and I may be able to help you at some point in the future to do the trivial things that are inconvenient for you to do. In his view, since he will be pulled into here without defense and resistance, it means that the initiative is in the hands of the mysterious fool, not to refuse to want to no longer participate in the party. It will be successful, so it is better to dig deeper and better the benefits of this encounter, and use the harvest to make up for the passivity and disadvantage. The three parties at the long table have different backgrounds, different resources, different news channels, different mysterious fields of understanding. If they can communicate with each other, limited cooperation will produce a wonderful effect that cannot be estimated and measured. For example, the exchange of resources just said. For example, if you want to kill a person, you can ask the party members who have nothing to do with you in surface and substance to help, which will make things perfectly misguided to go in another direction. A lady of noble birth, how I act, is my accent that obvious? Audrey's mouth was half open and she started for a moment, but she quickly came to herself and nodded without hesitation. Mr. Fool, I think this is a good offer, as long as the meeting becomes regular. Some things, if you are not convenient to come forward, can be passed on to us, of course, within our capacity. From the beginning, Joming Rui is weighing the pros and cons. More parties can indeed allow themselves to harvest more extraordinary mysteries and mystical knowledge, help to cross back in the future, such as the next party should appear in the audience, this potion formula, the same, but also for the current real life to get information, get some help. However, the more parties are also more likely to expose their own vanity and reality. Sure enough, no matter what world, there is no only good things. Joming Rui reached out his right hand again and tapped the edge of the long table with his finger. Considering that the convening and disbanding of the party were under their own control, even if any problems were exposed, they were within their control, and the benefits obviously outweighed the disadvantages. Joming Rui made a quick decision. He stopped tapping and smiled at her expectant and perturbed eyes. I'm a quid pro quo person. I won't let you help me unconditionally. Every Monday, 3 p.m., try to be alone as much as possible. And when I try a few more times and figure something out, maybe you can take off early and not worry about being in the wrong place. That's saying yes to Alger and Audrey's offer. Audrey has just turned 17 years old, has been much cared for. The young girl heart is very heavy. Heard the fool, mister. Answer suddenly could not help but clench his fist in the chest, lightly swinging twice. Then shouldn't we have a title for ourselves? You can't communicate with your real name, she said, her eyes shining brightly before Alger could speak. Although my true situation may not be hidden from Mr. Fool, but the opposite guy is also some danger. Cannot let him know who I really am. Good idea. Joe Mingrui answered briefly and easily. Audrey immediately began to think and said, You're Mr. Fool from the tarot card, and as a regular, long, secret gathering, the title must be as consistent as possible. Well, I'll take it from the tarot card too. Her voice slowly became a careful, decided, my title is Justice. This is one of the 22 main cards in the tarot deck. And you, sir? Audrey smiled and looked across at her companion. Alger frowned a little and then relaxed. Hang people upside down. This is another main card. Well, then we are founding members of the Tarot Society. Audrey first blurted out happily, and then looked a little timidly at Joe Mingrui, who was shrouded in gray mist. Is it all right, Mr. Fool? Joe Mingrui laughed and shook his head. You can make up your own mind about such a small matter. Thank you. Audrey was visibly excited. Then she looked at Alger again. Mr. Hanger-On, could you repeat the address? I'm afraid my memory isn't strong enough. No problem. Alger, quite satisfied with Audrey's earnestness, repeated the address again. After meditating 3 times, Audrey said again with enthusiasm, I heard that tarot cards were only invented by Russell the Great, and in fact do not have the function of divination? No, most of the time, divination comes from within. Everyone has spirituality, can feel the spirit world, can feel the information of the higher level of the relationship itself. But ordinary people are not aware of this, let alone interpret the obtained tips when they use the tools of divination. These information will be presented with the tools, a simple example, dreams and interpretation of dreams. Alger took a look at Joe Mingrui, saw that he did not show, he denied Audrey's statement. Tarot cards actually belong to this kind of tool. It uses more symbols, more reasonable elements, to help us more convenient and accurate interpretation of the cue. Joe Mingrui seemed careless. In fact, he listened very carefully. But his mental emptiness began to become serious, and his head was throbbing with pain. Got it. Audrey nodded in approval, and then stressed. That's not what I mean. I'm not questioning the tarot cards. I heard that Russell the Great actually made another deck of cards, secret cards, symbols of some unknown power. There are 22 cards. And when he finished, he used this to invent the 22 main cards of the tarot card as a game tool. Is that accurate? She looked at Joe Mingrui, as if she wanted an answer from the mysterious Mr. Fool. Joe Mingrui just smiled, did not open his mouth, and turned his eyes to the inverted hanging person. A test you look. Alger straightened his back unconsciously and said in a deep voice, Yes, it is said that Russell the Great saw the blasphemous tablets, and that the deck of cards contain the secret of the 22 ways of the gods. 22 ways of God, Audrey repeated in a tone full of longing. At this time, Joe Mingrui's headache intensified, and he felt that the invisible connection between himself and the dark red stars and the gray mist began to shake. Well, that's all for today's party. He decided immediately and spoke in a low voice. Obey your will. Alger bowed his head in salute. Obey your will. Audrey mimicked hanging people upside down. She had so many questions and so many thoughts she couldn't bear to end. Jominggrui broke off contact and smiled. Let's look forward to the next meeting. The star brightened again, and the crimson light shrank back like water. And as soon as Audrey and Alger heard Mr. Fool's words, their figures grew fainter and more illusory. In less than a second, the projection broke and silence returned above the fog. Jominggrui felt himself quickly becoming heavy, floating around, before the first dark, then brilliant sunshine. He was still in the apartment, still standing in the middle. Like a dream. What the hell is that foggy world? Who or what kind of force made the change? Jominggrui sighed in a low voice, full of confusion, his legs as if filled with lead to the desk. He picked up the pocket watch he had left outside and checked how long had passed. A 1-to-1 time flow rate? Jominggrui probably judged. Put down his pocket watch. His head was cracking. He could no longer support it. Sat on a chair, lowered his head, and massaged both temples with his left thumb and middle finger. After a long time, he sighed and said in Chinese, "It looks like we won't be going back anytime soon." The ignorant can be fearless, and after seeing such magical things, understanding the extraordinary field and the mysterious world, Jominggrui dared not recklessly try the transfer ceremony of ancient Fusak and rune language. Who knows if there will be another situation, perhaps more strange, more horrible, and even make life worse than death. At least not until you have a good grasp of the occult. Jominggrui thought helplessly. Fortunately, so-called parties can help themselves. There was another silence, and with frustration, loss, pain, and melancholy he said to himself, "From no one, I'm Klein." Klein tried to turn her mind back to ways and plans to get rid of the negative emotions in her mind. Next week, we may hear the recipe for the audience potion. The gathering just now is really amazing. People in different parts of the world, thousands of miles into each other. Face-to-face communication, exchange of needs. This is a little familiar. Klein paused for a few seconds, suddenly laughing, pressed her hand to her temple, and whispered to herself, "Online dating platforms?